Sorry there. Had a brief delay with Restream getting launched, but good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is treating the symptom. And this is a pervasive problem in our culture, where we go after problems that are actually symptoms and engage in this experience or this pursuit that is kind of like whack-a-mole, because when you're treating symptoms, other symptoms arise, right? So the way that we conceptualize problems and solutions can use some evolution. That's what we're going to talk about. Good morning, Rosalind. Welcome. Great to have you here with us this morning. And welcome to everybody else who's joining us. Again, today we're talking about treating actual solutions rather than just focusing, treating actual solutions rather than symptoms. So it should be an interesting conversation. But before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your molecules, all your cells, all your electrons, and creating a brilliant beam of light from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together. Rub the hands vigorously together and feel all that friction and temperature and tension and tingling and tickling when you stop, and allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And our topic today is treating the symptom rather than treating the problem, which is kind of what we tend to do culturally, because we're so busy wanting to get it done, fix it, that we don't really look deeply enough to discover what it is actually that needs fixing. So Rosalind says GP Walsh calls this scratching your nose when your butt itches, which is hysterical. And I peeked at that while I was trying to give our introduction, and it kind of threw me off. But thank you for that, Rosalind. It is exactly that. And it's sort of a pervasive issue. So this came up yesterday in a really rich conversation around social justice. And there are lots of organizations that are and people, individuals committed to social justice. And what was interesting in this conversation was that while we might be talking about social justice, we don't really know what that is. And we don't really necessarily have an agreement. Like, what do you mean by social justice? What do I mean by social justice? What does it mean to have a commitment to social justice? What does it mean to be creating a world that is socially just and equitable. I don't believe we've ever had that. Certainly not as a Western culture. We have never had a culture that is socially just and equitable. And that may be an inflammatory statement, but I stand by it. If we look deeply, we can see that it's quite an obvious truth. Good morning, Robin. Welcome. So good to have you here with us this morning. We're talking about treating the symptom. And so around this social justice issue, and this is not our only issue, you know, we can go on and on about this, but this is just a really potent example, I think. The truth is that we can't legislate social justice. What our laws tend to do is to limit the degree of harm. What our laws tend to do is to say we can tolerate this much badness. And the thing is, when we're talking about social justice, what I think is so valuable and important is to start engaging in a conversation about what that means and what's at the heart of injustice. Rather than saying, well, we don't have equitable policies around wages, we don't have equitable policies around hiring or opportunity. But we can legislate that. However, it's like playing whack-a-mole, because there'll be one injustice here and we can legislate for that, and another one here and we can try to legislate for that. And what happens is we end up being so heavily legislated, and the issue of social justice or environmental safety or environmental justice or on and on and on, those things aren't resolved by the legislation, because those things that we're looking at to legislate are symptoms of a larger problem. And the thing is that we in the West particularly have this reductionist approach to pretty much everything, trying to like a mechanized universe. And so we try to impose that notion of mechanization on everything. And so we look at things like a machine. So if there's the problem with unequal wages, then we get to legislate that and that'll fix it, but it doesn't, because it's part of a larger system. And the thing is that it's a living system. And as a living system, it doesn't follow the rules of mechanics necessarily. And so this conversation arose because of a situation that was shared around someone in an organization speaking out in a way that was really, really disruptive, but indicative to me of a deeper problem. Like it wasn't the problem between these two people, it was a deeper problem that might not be that apparent. It's easy to shoot the messenger, right? It's easy to lay blame at the foot of someone who is disrupting what looks like the status quo. But the nature of that disruption is an indicator that there's something else going on. And in our communications, there are so many dimensions of dynamics of communication, of trust, of vulnerability, of shared values, of creating a container and a context. What does that look like? You know, we tend to assume that other people think the way that we do and that they value the things that we do and that they mean the same things that we do when we speak certain words. And so what was so interesting in this situation was that there was history in this context that had never been healed. And, you know, so thinking about social justice, what I recognize is here we're trying to legislate people into behaviors. The thing is that we have so many deep injustices in our country, in our history, with slavery, with the genocide of indigenous peoples that have never been properly addressed. These things have never been owned with responsibility. And how can we possibly get to a place of social justice and equity when our whole system is rooted in abuse of some form or another that we have never been accountable to? And I don't mean we as individuals, I mean we culturally on all sides. You know, we haven't engaged in the healing process that allows us to mourn the evils, to all find ourselves accountable rather than pointing fingers at each other, saying you did this and you did that. This is a dynamic of interactive forces. And this goes to the notion of talking about treating the symptom. You know, so much of the violence that we have in the world is a function of inequity. I mean, what it comes down to me, at least what I've come to so far, what it comes down to is othering, that we feel separate from ourselves and from each other, and we view oftentimes, at least culturally, money as more important than people, business and the rights of business to make money as more important than the welfare of people. You know, there's a displacement of values that goes back generations and generations and generations. And so if we're trying to craft a system of equity and justice, social justice, we don't have a model for it. It doesn't exist, at least not in the Western culture. And so what we're called to do is to generate something entirely new. And one of the failings of organizations that are trying to implement, and I don't mean just social justice organizations, but environmental organizations, any kind of organization that's really trying to implement change, is looking, pretty much in my experience, is looking primarily at symptoms rather than essential causes and dynamics of an interactive living system. So Rosalind says mistrust of the government system. Well, yeah, I mean, the government is very much a function of these dysfunctional structures and social structures. And in fact, we can see that right now playing out in the Supreme Court with Clarence Thomas not recusing himself. There is a law, I believe it's a law, that says, well, maybe it's not a law. I'm not certain. I just heard about it the other day. So I believe it's written into law that a justice must recuse themselves if there is an appearance even of conflict of interest between something that they may be ruling on and something that they or their spouse might be impacted by directly in terms of social or political belief or impact. So I totally murdered that. I apologize, but if you look it up, I'm sure you will find this piece of guidance anyway, at the very least, about the Supreme Court and how people on the Supreme Court are obliged to recuse themselves from judging certain cases. And the thing is that there is no enforcement, there's no system to enforce that guidance, which may or may not be a law. I'm not certain about that. So this is a very interesting thing. It looks like well, what that came up out of the conversation around mistrust of the government system. We're seeing all kinds of areas of abuse and corruption in our governance. It's no surprise, right? We don't have a model for how to create a truly just and equitable system. Good morning, Jenny. So glad to have you here with us this morning. We're talking about treating the symptom. And so, it's interesting, this conversation, because it opened things up on a bunch of different levels with this person, I think, and it opened things up on a bunch of different levels for me to be looking at, well, here was something that happened. Here was an outburst that happened in a rather inappropriate way that really was profoundly disruptive, and it is indicative of my response to it was not like, how do you handle the person or the people that are involved? Do we get the attorneys involved? Do we talk to HR? What do we do? Oh, Jenny is asking, did I have a chance to watch the dimming? And I say, and the answer, Jenny, is no. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put it up here right now for me to look for it. And I'm guessing it's documentary. Okay, so now I just put it up, so I will check it out. It says it's a BBC global dimming documentary about geoengineering. I will check it out. Anyway, the climate engineering documentary, interesting, and it looks like it's pretty recent. Well, thank you for the reminder. I really appreciate it. I get sidetracked sometimes because there's so many things for me to be checking out. So I really appreciate it, Jenny. Thank you. And Gia, good morning. Welcome back. It's great to have you here with us. So we're talking about treating the symptoms. And so here's the thing that I'm gonna just encourage outright. When we have something that we're defining as a problem, let's look more deeply. Let's look more deeply at the dynamics of it rather than jumping to a conclusion about what the problem is just so we can go into solution mode. Because our doingness is something that drives us to try and fix things, right? And even in our current Western medical paradigm, you go to the doctor with a sore throat and you come away with whatever medicine to address the sore throat, we don't, or maybe you have anxiety. So you go to the doctor and you get medicines to address the anxiety, where in fact the anxiety may be that there's some toxicity in your diet or in your environment, or, like whether it's actually physical or perhaps emotional. Like maybe anxiety is a healthy response to certain circumstances that you might be living in, and so maybe those circumstances need looking at. We can be looking at behaviors, for instance, people who have come from trauma-inducing environments might be turning to medication, might be turning to some kind of addiction to cope in that situation. You can band-aid the situation by using those medications, whether they be pharmaceutical or otherwise, or you can be looking, or both, maybe, you can be looking at what the dynamics are in that situation that are producing that the anxiety is a side effect from. So we, in our rush to try to be in control and to have certainty, we often try to oversimplify the issue that we're addressing, because the complexity is hard. The complexity is hard to hold and overwhelming in many, many cases. Jenny says treatment of the symptoms is not the cause or the problem. Just give you a toxic pill to band-aid results that make stuff worse. Yeah, exactly. Jenny says, I was a Paxil zombie for 10 years. Wow. That's a big deal to come off of too. I know people on Paxil. It's a serious drug. And it's hard work getting to root cause. It's not the obvious strategy, we want to find an easy fix, and we often try to medicate our way out of things. And I would say that legislation is a way of trying to medicate our way out of things in many, many, many cases. Jenny says emotional suppression is bad. I get that. Emotional suppression on long term can be deadly, in fact, and because all that energy turns in on ourselves ultimately. And the thing is that emotional work is work, and it is not for the faint of heart. It takes tremendous courage to be able to confront the pain, the guilt, the shame, the ugly emotions, the ugly things we may have done in our individual lives, or, for example, as I was speaking of earlier, our cultural history. But until we recognize the toxicity of the system, until we recognize, we don't even have to characterize it as toxicity. We can say the true dynamics of the system. Until we recognize that, until we deliberately address the historical trauma, how can we possibly, how can we possibly create something that is equitable when we don't even know what that means? So I'm not saying we look to the past to find equity. What I'm saying is we look to the potential, the future, the possibility to look at, to discover how to find new paths forward. There is healing that needs to be done. And that isn't going to happen globally because it's too big. How it happens is lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of local efforts, whether it's in the organization within which we work, or within our families, within ourselves, within our communities. So when we connect on a local level, we can start creating new paradigms. We can start generating healing. We can start really addressing the dynamics of this living system in a way that the symptoms then start to disappear. That's the objective. Jenny says the pills help you avoid it all. It's difficult to learn how to heal and deal with life differently. I'll bet it is. And Jenny, it's not just the pills that help you avoid it. Lots of people do to avoid feeling anything. Like I will be a doing machine, and that way I don't have to feel my feelings. I will distract myself with doing the laundry, cleaning the house, doing the groceries, whatever it is. I will make sure I stay busy. And that's one way that I can avoid having to address the things that are screaming for attention. And we're at a new phase of our evolution where we get to address these things, or we're really, truly, deeply, honestly facing destruction on so many fronts. So Jenny says, I was looking at brain spotting, EMDR, and hypnosis. All good things, Jenny, really good things. And also go look for tapping. Tapping is also a powerful self-care technique. And if you go to the tapping solution, I think it's called the tappingsolution.com, you'll find all kinds of tapping exercises that can help with lots of different levels too. So healing, what do? We need to heal ourselves, our families, our communities, our organizations. And ultimately, as more and more of that healing gains true momentum, then there's the potential for a global transformation. So at least that's my perspective. And there's an urgency about it. So let's get to it. And you folks who are listening, I know that you are committed to your own evolution and healing, and that's what we talk about so often. So good on you, and let's bring that out into our rippling circles. So much love to you. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live here each weekday morning on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel at 9 a.m. Eastern. And I invite you to please check out the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network, EWN, One with the Earth, and Enlightened World Living. And until next time, thank you, thank you, thank you. I have so much gratitude for your courage and your willingness to engage in these often confronting conversations. And I have so much love and appreciation